Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video, more about them later. You know a director is the real deal when they can announce their film's theme in the opening minute without a single line of dialogue. Ari Aster's Midsommar begins with images of a tranquil forest accompanied by a tribal chant, which is then suddenly interrupted by the shrill ring of a phone as we cut to a row of suburban houses. And right there is the thematic premise of the movie. Pre-modern life offers the soothing embrace of community a la the singing, while modern life is isolating and miserable a la the shrieking phone. But is the melody really serene, or is it actually kinda creepy, setting an uneasy tone for what is about to be another deeply demented Aster offering? Well, it's both, and that ambiguity is precisely why the film strikes such a nerve. We recoil at the clearly deranged Harga way of life, but also recognize the perverse solace it offers its members. In a time of loneliness epidemics, climbing depression rates, and social divisions that seem to get worse every day, Midsommar speaks to our suspicion that the really old ways, however cruel and irrational, may have actually offered a functioning antidote to the modern condition. But what if I told you the movie reveals something disturbing, not just about old belief systems, but belief itself? Something that's not just about building community and not unique to some ancient Swedish commune. What if Danny's iconic smile at the end reveals a dark truth about the communities we build and the beliefs we cling to, even today? Well, to find out, we're gonna have to take the father of modern sociology on a haunting trip to the Nordics, revisit a stone-cold Hitchcock classic, and dig up an absolute banger of Mexican cinema. Let's dive in. But first, a quick recap. Midsommar follows Danny, a college student left emotionally shattered after her sister's mental illness leads to the death of her entire family. The only person she can rely on is her boyfriend Christian, whose support is distant and half-hearted to say the least. Despite Christian's wishes, Danny joins him and his grad school buddies on a trip to the Harga commune in rural Sweden, where the ancient culture is holding a once every 90 years Midsummer festival filled with elaborate rituals. As the days pass, the outsiders witness increasingly disturbing ceremonies. Some of the friends go missing, are later found murdered, and Christian is slowly seduced into becoming a breeding partner for one of the Harga women. Danny, still wrestling with grief, finds herself embraced by the women of the commune, takes part in their traditional maypole dance, and is crowned the May Queen. Christian is drugged and coerced into impregnating a villager, which Danny witnesses, sending her into a full-on breakdown, but the Harga community is there to support her. The festival culminates in a final ritual sacrifice. As May Queen, Danny is given the responsibility of choosing the last offering and picks Christian, who is burned in a temple with other Harga members. As the fire rages, Danny watches on and smiles. The end. Alright, so one of the things that really stands out about Midsommar is the way it plays with the folk horror subgenre. Folk horror films often follow a straightforward formula. Modern, quote, civilized outsiders stumble into a world dominated by primitive rituals, pagan customs, or cult-like practices, and it's all real creepy. The classic example is The Wicker Man.
Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes!
Not that one. The original follows a devoutly Christian police sergeant who travels to a remote Scottish island in search of a missing girl, only to discover that the residents have abandoned Christianity for pagan fertility rituals that ultimately demand his death. Midsommar owes a lot to this film. In some respects, Midsommar follows this template to the letter. Outsiders arrive, rituals unfold, horror ensues, yada yada. But Ari flips this formula in a clever way. With most of these films, the terror lies in the idea that humanity has a violent, primitive, and irrational past that's gotta be resisted and avoided. But that's not quite what we see in Midsommar. While the Harga's darkness does destroy her friends, when it comes to Danny, it actually redeems her. In the end, the commune provides her the support and belonging her previous relationships couldn't, even if it comes wrapped in murder, drugs, and pube pies. Because at its core, Midsommar is a story about integration. If you think about Danny's character arc, she doesn't really learn anything about herself or achieve a goal. Hers is a story of integration. She starts out in a fragmented, selfish community and ends completely absorbed in a cohesive, unified one. And this idea that barbaric, irrational rituals can serve a crucial role in binding people together was central to the work of modern sociology's founding father, Emil Durkheim. Durkheim devoted his career to answering a question that also lies at the heart of Midsommar. What holds society together? A functioning society depends on strong communal bonds, but the form those bonds take changes as societies evolve. With the transition to modernity, people started becoming more individualistic, or what he called organic solidarity. And while Durkheim thought this transition was necessary and even desirable, it poses a danger if people stop depending on the group entirely and only recognize rules of conduct that serve their own private interests. The result is a weaker society defined by what he called excessive individualism. Christian, his bros, and the general vibe of Danny's pre-Harga life embody excessive individualism to a T. Christian has been in a relationship with Danny for years, yet he does nothing but downplay her concerns about her sister.
She does this every other day, Danny, and only because you let her.
Leaving Danny overwhelmed with guilt for leaning on him at all.
And I lean on him constantly for support. Like, what if I have overwhelmed him?
To Mark, Danny's need for care qualifies as abuse.
That's not her again. Seriously?
It's literally abuse. She's abusing you.
And their relationship is nothing but an obstacle to Christian's sexual freedom.
See? You could be getting that girl pregnant right now.
Then, when Danny experiences the most horrific family tragedy imaginable, Christian tries to quietly dip to Sweden during her recovery. Here, relationships exist to enhance personal enjoyment, not to provide mutual support. It's all there in the visuals. Danny is framed as separated from Christian by a hard line cutting the frame in half, and later, when the group is chilling on the couch, Danny only appears as a reflection in the mirror. The point is, she's present, but not integrated. Durkheim argued that when people don't feel integrated into a community, they experience anomie, a feeling of untethered meaninglessness, thus Danny's panic attacks, and perhaps even the despair that consumed her sister. Then Danny arrives at the commune and her journey towards integration begins. But before we break that down, I want to tell you about this video's sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel unwanted subscriptions, lower your bills, and manage your money smarter. When you make content about movies, you tend to sign up for a lot of streaming services and then completely forget what you're paying for. Luckily, I downloaded Rocket Money and managing my finances instantly got easier. Once I connected my bank account, the app showed me every subscription I was paying for, including some services I hadn't touched in a long time. With just a couple taps, Rocket Money helped me start the process of canceling them. No more long phone calls or deliberately confusing cancellation pages. Rocket Money also ended up saving me money automatically when it helped me negotiate my phone bill, and their budgeting tools are ace. They give me a clear picture of where my money's going so I can make sure I'm spending responsibly. So to save more and spend less, join the over 10 million members using Rocket Money today. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get started. It's free to download. And now, back to Danny's journey towards integration. Twice in the film, she experiments with hallucinogens, and both times the visions hint at what she's missing: integration, of being woven into something bigger. The Harga society is structured around a simple principle.
I mean, everybody sort of does everything together.
Everyone wears similar clothing, shares in the required labors, raised children collectively.
Babies are raised here by everyone.
And decisions are made in the interest of the group, or what Durkheim called mechanical solidarity, where cohesion comes from common resemblance, shared ritual, and the submersion of the individual personality into the collective. In such a system, anomie does not exist. From here on out, the film posits a series of contrasts between the two worlds. Take Danny's birthday. Christian totally forgets, and when reminded, can only muster a half-assed slice of cake. On the other hand, Pelle, the Harga native, offers her an intimate hand-drawn sketch that clearly took hours. The difference is clear. Where Christian's world offers neglect and selfishness, he even shamelessly apes Josh's thesis.
You find your own subject.
The Harga world insists that every gesture be oriented toward the collective. A similar distinction emerges in how each world confronts death. At the beginning, Danny is devastated by her sister's tragic act, or what Durkheim called egoistic, born of isolation and lack of integration. When Danny witnesses the Harga's death ritual, the very same act is reframed as something done willingly, for the sake of the group, or what Durkheim called altruistic.
We give our life as a gesture.
What once devastated Danny is now staged as a source of shared meaning and renewal. The comparison is even made explicit when Danny sees a vision of her sister laying beside the fallen elders. Now, to be clear, Durkheim did not think this was a good thing. In fact, altruistic deaths were evidence of too much social integration and not enough individuality, but I think in the context of the film, the comparison is supposed to haunt us. What almost broke Danny can, with a community and ideology behind it, be transformed into something supportive. We see something similar in Pelle's story about his parents' death.
My parents, they burned up in a fire and I became technically an orphan.
By the end, it's strongly implied that this too was a voluntary sacrifice, but that's the point. For Pelle, it wasn't cataclysmic. Unlike Danny, he didn't spiral into despair because the act further embedded him in the community.
Yet my difference is I never got the chance to feel lost because I had a family.
And that's exactly what Danny finds, a family. She's invited to share in their labor, starts dressing like them, and is eventually crowned as the figurehead of the festival. During the maypole dance, we witness her image visually superimposed over the larger group, and in the end, her May Queen costume envelops her entire body. Her arc is complete. She's no longer an individual adrift in grief, she's been blissfully consumed by the collective. For Durkheim, a key tool in maintaining social cohesion is religion through rituals and symbols, and the power of this tool relies on maintaining a strict boundary between what he called the sacred and the profane, or between acts and symbols that represent something greater and demand the utmost respect, and basically just everyday life stuff. If this boundary collapses, the community loses the symbolic glue that keeps it together. In our world, profaning the sacred has basically become a favorite pastime, as Christian and the Bros undermine this distinction at every turn. Mark pees on their ancestral tree, brushing it off like it's no bigs.
It's a dead tree, though. It's dead.
Yeah, I know, but it's important to us.
I just had to pee. I didn't know it was special.
And mocks the women's ritual movements.
Somebody should tell those girls they're walking stupid.
Connie and Simon openly insult their death ritual, while Josh dismisses the sacredness of their holy text, the Ruby Ratter, treating it instead as anthropological fodder that will make him academia famous. Then he secretly photographs it, which is a big no-no. All of these transgressions are met with death. Now, while there's an element of horror film logic in the idea that they need to die for profaning the sacred, it nevertheless underscores the film's Durkheimian point, that this distinction is needed to maintain community. For Durkheim, rituals allow communities to generate what he called collective effervescence, the intoxicating sense of belonging that comes from merging into the group's emotional energy. Danny is swept up in this force during the maypole dance, and most strikingly, when she collapses in grief after Christian's betrayal, the women surround her and mirror her screams, the exact opposite of the reluctant support she received back in the US. The same group screaming is seen during the death ritual and at the closing ceremony. Here, pain is transformed into a communal act of catharsis. So let's take it back to the final image of the movie, Danny's smile. Her arc is complete. She has shed her enemy and surrendered herself to the collective. She belongs, right? Well, yes, but I think there's more to it. While the serenity of belonging is definitely there in that smile, so is the satisfaction of revenge. If the point were only about integration, then it wouldn't be particularly relevant that Christian is included in the ritual, but he is. She chooses him. And here I think the film reveals something crucial about belief systems. Yeah, they help build community and meaning, but they also provide a morally sanctioned framework through which individuals can justify their personal desires. It's a lot easier for people to pursue what they want when it's legitimized by belief. And I think this is most iconically dramatized in the stone-cold Hitchcock masterpiece, Rear Window. 5 stars all day on my Letterboxd. Click below to follow me. Rear Window follows L.B. Jeffries, an award-winning photojournalist stuck in his apartment with a broken leg, reduced from adventuring around the world covering wars and revolutions to spying on his neighbors out of boredom. One night, Jeffries begins to fixate on his neighbor Thorwald, whose wife mysteriously disappears. The evidence that Thorwald murdered her is paper thin. But Jeffries clings to the belief that a murder has been committed. Why? Well, there's the communal angle a la Midsommar, as when his fiancée starts indulging his paranoia, they rediscover an intimacy in their relationship that was missing. But there's also the selfish motive. The act of belief allows him to re-inhabit his identity as an adventurer. Turns out, LB is correct. When Thorwald confronts Jeffries at the end, he says,
"What is it you want? A lot of money? I don't have any money. Say something. Say something. Tell me what you want."
But Jeffries doesn't have an answer, because it's not about money or even justice. It's about laundering his personal craving for risk and adventure through the guise of moral duty, about turning personal desire into a righteous purpose. Or take another classic, the tragically underappreciated Mexican dark comedy, The Skeleton of Mrs. Morales. The film follows a taxidermist and his obsessively religious wife who feels trapped by their domestic life and spends every second trying to make her husband miserable. She tells everyone in town he's a monster.
Siempre encuentra el modo de torturarme, de herirme en lo más íntimo. Es un monstruo.
And justifies her cruelty through her Catholic faith and a servile priest who enables her. Her devotion is a tool to legitimize her resentment towards her husband, so Mr. Morales decides to poison her and, well, you just gotta see the movie. The point is, belief systems, whether religious, secular, or conspiratorial, have a function beyond social cohesion. They authorize individuals to indulge their desires. They offer a sacred cover under which impulses like vengeance, resentment, or the thrill of adventure can be pursued with moral legitimacy. I guess in a way I'm making a sort of Nietzschean point. Nietzsche argued that Christian morality itself was born from ressentiment, or resentment. Basically, the Christian moral code didn't take hold because it was true, but because it allowed the weak to rebrand their circumstances as virtues and launder their hatred for the powerful into a sacred cause. Although Nietzsche focused specifically on Christian morality, his core insight applies to belief systems of any kind. That's why Danny's revenge on Christian feels so deeply messed up. Her hatred is transformed into a sacred act. Her smile is haunting because in this moment, her belonging and her vengeance become indistinguishable. And I think one of the reasons the film cuts so deep is, look, I mean, things are super fractured these days and everybody knows it. Loneliness is rampant, depression rates continue to climb, and calls to return to belief or rediscover community are getting louder, and for good reason, because as Durkheim identified, rituals, symbols, and shared values really do bind people together. But we have to be careful and we have to try to be honest. When we reach for belief in community, we aren't always looking for truth or justice. Often, we're just looking for an excuse to pursue our own desires under the cover of morality. That's the paradox of belief systems. They can heal the fractures of individualism, but they can just as easily conceal our most selfish and destructive individual impulses. Hey, y'all, thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out Rocket Money by clicking the link in the description or by scanning the QR code. Also, be sure to subscribe because my next video is on one of my all-time favorites, RoboCop. Enjoy the holidays, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.